So once more, welcome everyone to Ecosystem Development Academy webinar and module 2 for some of the key building blocks. So some of the key topics for today, we go through the main building blocks. We focus on the governance aspect, how to consider getting some structure around the ecosystem orchestration and development. We look at the cultural aspects, building interoperability and interoperability in general, measurements and sustainability for long-term development. So just briefly from my background, for those who haven't or who joined on the second module, so I have a background in serial entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship around innovation and building new ventures globally for more than 20 years, as well as business advisory experience over 10 years with high volumes of new innovation entrepreneurs, as well as ecosystem development in the longer term for local ecosystems, and then also for more than 5-6 years, I think now, around helping ecosystem developments with other ecosystems around the world, as well as then all various types of support function development, funding instrument development, and so forth. So a very the key point from here is the holistic aspect from multiple different aspects, looking into developing to support innovation entrepreneurship through ecosystem development. And of course, I'm still currently an active entrepreneur involved with multiple ventures, building innovations as well. So, but before we start, I want to just quickly stop and check if there's any questions that we should take into account more towards leading to the materials for module 2 that may be taken into account when going through the materials. So, Oscar, anything from your side or from the participants that have shared upfront?
No, I think that participants are expecting to start the module.
All right. So, okay, let's get started. So, towards the end of the last module, we look at some of the key principles of the ecosystem development. So these are kind of the fundamental core rules to think about and keep in mind when looking at ecosystem development. Only things that can be understood can be developed, so there is a need for knowledge component and collective knowledge improvement for the ecosystem development activities. Only things that can be measured can be improved, so KPIs, key performance indicators, and aligning those are very important. And then only by sharing things and making those visible is there an opportunity for some of the co-development to actually become to life and become commons, but only if those shared things are actually being worked on together. There is not really working together in practice, but this is the way to really bring a effective way to develop that way of working together, because it's much harder to start directly between different processes than it is to looking at the shared things or shared challenges that are attaching the key actors looking to collaborate. So getting things to shared use and then actually using those to benchmark different activities, does it materialize from wanting to develop ecosystem into actually not only through the tools, but then also the practical development effort and measuring the outputs through shared tools, does it start to come a kind of a more complete picture. So these are good principles to always have available and keep in mind when thinking of the different aspects of multi-stakeholder joint development efforts. So we have multiple areas when developing the ecosystem. These core aspects where when we look at the building approach, it's not to be looked at these only like one after another, but really to consider each of these on one hand separately, but then most importantly to consider them also collectively. So initially, once the kind of the ecosystem concept has materialized in key stakeholders' minds, and there's this multi-stakeholder collaborative effort and willingness and inspiration to go forward, it's already a good thing to start thinking of how do we build some structures around it, how do we make collectively decisions on what things we should prioritize and what not, how can we consider pooling resources and so forth. So governance overall is a key aspect to think about how does that apply over and around those shared things and shared assets being both created and used and further developed. And then, of course, there is the whole culture aspect around. There is a saying to moving from ecosystems to ecosystems, meaning that having that inclusive culture and the mindset of contributing towards the ecosystem to benefiting from the ecosystem as such. So not immediately just thinking of what do I get from the ecosystem, but more of what I can contribute for the ecosystem, and in return, when others do the same, what is the collective benefits that we can achieve from this aspect. So the cultural aspect of ecosystem mindset building is a key piece. Interoperability is a core piece from multiple different aspects of considering the building connectivity or building measurability and making things click with each other. So this goes from connecting different services in the ecosystem, from coming from different development phase to connecting to other services on the following development phase, support services, and then also interoperability between the information exchange between those services, and then more broadly with the services in their entire ecosystem. And then getting into the measurement part that looks into making sure that there are first and foremost logical measures in place, that there are key performance indicators in place that actually give the type of information needed from the development aspect of the various different pieces of the ecosystem. And most importantly, that same functions, for example, in a support function, the same functions would be measured with same KPIs for comparability on return of investment, for efficiency of output, and so forth. And then also that these measurements can carry and sustained time. So it's important that in addition to having specific support function, specific measures, that they are also ecosystem level, collectively used and shared measures that sustain time to make sure that a longer term development aspect can benefit from those measures and those KPIs in place that don't change, while not taking into account that there is also aspect to allow additional KPIs to exist for different functions being needed or new support functions to be implemented and so forth. So that is to find the right balance and taking into account that each of the measures in place need to contribute to the next level measures. So if there is no connectivity between the kind of the overall ecosystem output target and then a individual mentoring session or individual accelerator program, that there isn't a logical connection how those activities in the very hands-on level contribute for the output metrics, then that is a very problematic scenario, and it doesn't bring logical approaches to develop and measure things in the ecosystem. And then last but not least, a lot of the ecosystem functions are being run with either very limited budgets or periodical budgets, as we discussed in the previous module, that there's project-based funding, where there may be funding for 3 years, where during that time, a support function as one piece of the ecosystem being developed needs to be planned, it needs to be implemented, resources be acquired, knowledge being acquired, operating the service, measuring the service, trying to get the target results out, and then the worst case scenario is that the last 6 months goes into winding down the operations if sustainability is not reached for that program to continue. So sustainability in all of the various levels for individual support functions, but even most importantly for all of the key ecosystem functions, like maintaining ecosystem level shared knowledge, maintaining the governance structures and so forth. Sustainability by itself is a very important factor to focus on development. And as mentioned, each of these should be looked at not as independent thing, but as with a cross-cutting theme, so that whenever the ecosystem development activities are happening, all of these different aspects are looked at and also being developed in parallel, but in a cross-cutting way, so that those topics are both being developed independently, but also collectively and holistically in a parallel manner. So it doesn't work to just develop one of these aspects at a time until getting a more complete picture, but starting to develop different aspects of these in parallel and improving them over time.